is the torment of your friend, Father Karras, as he watches while I rip and cut and mutilate the innocent, his friends, and again and again and on and on.
He is inside with us! He will never get away! His pain won't end!
Oh, gracious me. Was I raving?
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome back to the Movie Buffer. And tonight we're going to be discussing one of my favorite films, The Exorcist III. Yes. The Exorcist III is a 1990 American psychological horror film written and directed by William Peter Blatty. It is the third installment of the Exorcist series, an adaptation of Blatty's Exorcist novel Legion that was done in 1983. It is also the final installment in Blatty's Faith Trilogy. It stars in a reprising role George C. Scott, Brad Dourif, I can't even express to you how much I love Brad, and especially in this movie, Ed Flanders, Jason Miller, Scott Wilson, and Nicol Williamson. The Exorcist III is set 17 years after the original film, ignoring the events of The Exorcist II, The Heretic, we'll talk about that, whatever. The year that Karras died is listed as 1975 on his headstone, placing the events of the original movie in 1975. It follows a character from the first film, Lieutenant William F. Kitterman, played by George C. Scott, we love him, who investigates a series of demonic murders in Georgetown that have the hallmarks of the Gemini, a deceased serial killer. Blatty based aspects of the Gemini killer on the real-life Zodiac killer, one of several serial killers who enjoyed the original Exorcist. And then, as we know, the next serial killer, or one of the next serial killers, Jeffrey Dahmer, instinctively loved this movie, and particularly the Gemini Killer. Go back and watch my Jeffrey Dahmer the Monster review as well. Blatty, who wrote the original Exorcist in 1971, the novel, and the screenplay for its 1973 film adaptation, conceived The Exorcist III with Exorcist director William Friedkin, who was also attached to direct. Friedkin pulled out of the project, so Blatty decided, I'll just make the script into an actual novel, because, I'm a writer. He turns their script they were toying with together into the best-selling novel called Legion in 1983. Morgan Creek Productions bought the film rights with Blatty as director. To Blatty's frustration, Morgan Creek demanded extensive last-minute changes, including the addition of an Exorcist sequence for the climax. Though some of the original footage appears permanently lost, Scream Factory released a director's cut closer to Blatty's vision in 2016. Followed the critical and commercial failure of Exorcist II, The Heretic, and I am going to go into that into another part of my Exorcist series, and we're going to talk about why it flopped. The Exorcist III received mixed reviews and made modest returns at the box office, even though it was amazing. In 1990, 17 years after Regan MacNeil's exorcism in 1973, Friar Dyer, Ed Flanders, and Lieutenant William F. Kitterman, George C. Scott, reminisces about Damien Karras. Now, the following night, an incident at a church occurs, indicating the presence of an evil supernatural entity, which causes a crucifix to open his eyes. The next scene then follows with perspective of a man walking on the street, speaking of a dream of falling down a flight of stairs, suggesting that someone is committing murders linked to Karras's death. Now, the next morning in the movie, Kinderman is called to find the body of Thomas Kintry. Kinderman reveals to the hospital staff that the murders fit the modus operandi of the Gemini killer, a serial killer who was executed 15 years prior. The patient was found wandering aimlessly 15 years previously with amnesia. He was locked up, catatonic, until he became violent and claimed to be the Gemini killer. Kinderman sees that the patient is his old friend Damien Karras, played by Jason Miller. Karras's form appears to briefly change into that of the Gemini killer. He expresses ignorance of Karras, but boasts of killing Dr. Dyer. And this goes on for, the dialogue. And the dialogue between Kinderman and the Gemini killer is amazing. This is really the root of this movie. This is what makes this movie, to me, in my opinion, absolutely amazing, because it's really not about the action. There's lots of action, lots of killing, lots of blood and stuff that happens in this movie, but their dialogue is freaking phenomenal. I am so glad that they kept it in. I am so glad that they focused in on it, because it is truly what really makes the movie, because it gives so much information on what is actually going on, really discussing Legion and those demons that was inside of the little girl in the first movie, and the demons that kind of took over the Gemini killer and took over Karras, kind of all of them together. And it was a way of kind of getting back at Karras for exorcising them. And it's really interesting. If you've watched it and you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, yeah, that was a pretty good scene, I don't know. No, you really have to watch those scenes and listen. It's really good. This movie reveals the entity as the Legion, which are many evil spirits, including the main spirit as Lucifer, the devil. For myself, being someone who has never believed that Lucifer would ever interact with humans on such a basic level as taking over their body, but may do this in order to discourage earthbound spirits such as live humans who have knowledge they should not have, in order to stop the possession of a strong spirit such as Karras. I have to say that the original Exorcist is a classic, yet Exorcist III is the best of the series. It has more depth, information, and character development than the original, and to me, it is clearly superior to the first. So, what did you think of Exorcist III? I have deemed it one of my absolute favorites of the Exorcist trilogy and the other continued movies that comes after this. But what did you think? Leave your comments below. I would love to hear from you. I read and answer all of the comments, unless it's really ridiculous, but I usually don't get that because I have a great group of people who come back. Thank you so much for being a movie buffer like myself. Please like and share and subscribe to keep this channel going. Again, thanks so much for watching. Peace. 2 fingers.